August 18, 1590. Governor John White returns to Roanoke Island off the coast of North Carolina, expecting to celebrate his granddaughter's 3rd birthday. He was supposed to be greeted by 115 colonists, but instead he sees only a dismantled fort and the central clue in the story of the colony's disappearance. There is no prearranged distress signal. There is only a single word, Croatoan, carefully carved into a wooden gatepost. The colonists' houses had not been burned. There were no signs of an attack either. Every structure had been methodically dismantled, signaling a highly organized, deliberate evacuation. So what happened? The men, women, and children seemed to have vanished into the coastal mist. Or did someone orchestrate this perfect historical disappearance? Let us go back several years. In 1584, Queen Elizabeth I's favorite, Walter Raleigh, received a 10-year patent to colonize America and sent 5 ships and about 500 people there. Under the terms of the patent, he was required to establish a permanent foothold in the new lands by 1591. However, the first expedition failed and severely damaged relations with the natives. Having endured countless hardships, famine, armed clashes with the Indians, and encounters with Francis Drake's pirates, the first colonists scattered. Many perished. The second expedition of 1587 was led by John White, a friend of Walter Raleigh, as governor of the new colony. Ordinary English families set out for the New World.
Mind the barrels!
A courageous man who took responsibility for common people daring to resettle, John White sailed into the unknown with his daughter, who was expecting a child. Upon arriving at Roanoke, the travelers found the natives distinctly unfriendly. It became clear that the first colonists had left behind bitter memories and bloodshed. Trapped on an island that had become dangerous, the desperate settlers defended themselves while rebuilding their new fort within the old fortifications. At that moment, Governor White departed for England in search of desperately needed supplies and military assistance. He returned exactly 3 years later to absolute silence. White stepped ashore on Roanoke on August 18, 1590, on the exact 3rd birthday of his granddaughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the new colony. For more than 400 years, colonial records considered them dead, until hidden symbols were discovered on an old paper map. In 2012, modern multispectral photography analyzed White's original watercolor map, carefully preserved in the archives of the British Museum. 4 centuries later, advanced scanning methods revealed a hidden symbol of a fort concealed beneath a physical paper patch. This hidden mark became the central clue in the mystery of the Roanoke colony, pointing to Site X 50 miles inland. Located along the Chowan River, this area offered natural protection and vital fresh water for desperate settlers struggling to survive. Recent archaeological excavations at this site uncovered fragmented European pottery dating precisely to the early 17th century. In 1607, the chief of several Indian tribes named Powhatan told colonists from another English colony, Jamestown, the grim truth about the missing English men and women. He stated directly that his warriors had once slaughtered a group of white settlers who had been living peacefully near the Chesapeake tribe. If this is true, it means the abandoned colonists survived successfully for nearly 20 years, hiding among Indian communities. Centuries later, researchers encountered the Lumbee tribe, whose members possessed distinct European physical features and spoke archaic English phrases. Astonishingly, these Indian families proudly bore familiar surnames, such as Dare, Powell, and Harvey, long before systematic colonization. Another possible destination was Hatteras Island, also known as Croatoan, located about 50 miles south of the Roanoke settlement. John White was never able to explore Hatteras because a violent hurricane forced his heavily damaged ship to return to Europe. Decades later, 48 stones surfaced bearing carved stories of the Roanoke Island colonists, stories of famine and Indian attacks, of suffering and death. Supposedly, they contained hidden messages from Eleanor Dare herself to her grandfather. However, historians eventually exposed 47 of these stones as a hoax. And yet, the absolute authenticity of the very first stone remains unconfirmed, leaving modern researchers deeply divided to this day. In addition, investigators of this story discovered the solitary letters CRO hastily carved into the bark of one of the ancient trees within the settlement. But before sailing to England, the governor had agreed in advance that in case of danger, the remaining colonists would leave a sign. They would carve a cross into a tree. Upon his return, he saw no cross. Where could more than 100 people with no military training have gone together? A journey of 50 miles along the coast was entirely manageable on foot in 2 or 3 difficult days. Imagine exhausted English families dragging heavy wooden carts across shifting coastal sands and deep, treacherous salt marshes. Some researchers claim that the desperate colony strategically split apart in order to increase its fragile chances of survival. One small group moved to Croatoan, desperate to witness the return of White's greatly delayed ships. A larger group headed inland towards Site X, searching for fertile farmland and reliable Indian trading partners. Beyond local conflicts, the settlers lived in constant, terrifying fear of roaming Spanish patrols eager to destroy them. The dismantling of the houses deliberately erased all visible evidence of their settlement from passing hostile Spanish naval fleets. For years, these forgotten pioneers stared at the empty Atlantic horizon, slowly abandoning their English identity in order to survive. Decades passed, and the isolated English bloodline inevitably merged with the native population, disappearing entirely from history. Colonial records declare the entire Roanoke settlement tragically dead. Emerging genetic patterns suggest that their descendants survived through the centuries. The Lumbee Tribe Family History Project launched large-scale genetic tracing to verify these specific colonial maternal lines. Genealogists successfully matched unique chromosomal markers of living tribe members with historical English families from the Tudor era. And this much can be said with certainty. The missing Roanoke colonists did not perish magically in the wilderness. They adapted culturally and quietly endured. The true mystery of Roanoke is no longer how they disappeared, but why England deliberately abandoned them. The politically and financially, declaring the colony a tragic total loss was far easier than organizing costly rescue operations. The hidden symbols on the map and detailed Indian accounts strongly suggest that they lived for decades concealed among local tribes. These abandoned pioneers were never lost to themselves. They were simply erased by a failing imperial bureaucracy. Governor John White died in complete obscurity, never learning that his beloved granddaughter Virginia had successfully survived in the American wilderness. The first European child born in America likely grew up speaking the Algonquian language of the local tribes, fully integrated into Indian culture. While London historians furiously composed dramatic tales of mysterious massacres, the colonists cultivated the land alongside the natives. The famous disappearance on Roanoke Island was never an inexplicable paranormal event, but rather a successful tactical retreat. 434 years later, this gripping colonial secret still actively haunts our modern historical consciousness. Are we searching for ghosts on an empty island while their living descendants hide in plain sight? Perhaps the Roanoke settlers were never tragic victims of colonial failure, but became unparalleled masters of adaptation. History textbooks recorded an absolute disappearance, deliberately ignoring the deeper truth carried forward within living human DNA. If they successfully vanished in order to survive, what other historical truths are presently buried beneath forgotten archival records? Our archival research continues. Human history contains too many disappearances, coincidences, forgeries, and unexplained traces to consider the Roanoke case a one-off. Today, we have at our disposal a nearly bottomless online treasure trove of forgotten documents and incredibly powerful artificial intelligence tools. This means there are still many strange, profound, and truly captivating investigations ahead.